Hi, I'm Michael Killen. Every state, every country, every county, every city needs to reduce the cost of operating the governments. I have invited Rich Gordon. He is an assemblyman in the state of California. I'm going to ask him a few questions about what has he done, what has the state of California done to help reduce costs. Hello, Rich, how are you?
I'm fine.
You heard the introduction, and would you agree the public, we're going through this period of trying to reduce costs?
Well, absolutely. First of all, in the state of California, we have been on a path with what we would call a structural deficit. That just simply means that for years we've been spending more than we take in. You can't do that. You've got to live within your means. So 2 years ago, when I got elected to the state assembly, then Governor-elect Jerry Brown said, we've got a $26 billion deficit in California. I've served for the last 2 years on the budget committee in the state assembly. We've reduced that structural deficit by 75%. We've made major cuts. We've frozen our spending to education. We've cut spending to the University of California. We've cut spending to programs that provide health services. We've cut almost everything we can cut. And so we're on the right path. There's more work to do.
All right. After his State of the State speech, the governor at some point said, I don't want to do this, but I'm really going to have to cut social services and education. And I think, and you correct me, on the November ballot, I'm going to give the voters an opportunity to speak up and try to help me raise taxes?
Correct. The governor's has a measure on the November ballot that would, for a 5-year period, extend sales taxes and income taxes. The income taxes are on the most productive, the highest earning Californians. Sales tax affects everybody. His plan is that if without those taxes, we would have further cuts, particularly to education. And locally, it could mean that in some cases, our schools, children will be in school 2 to 3 weeks less a year. We just don't have the money. The governor has, and I think it's correct, this concept that we should only extend these taxes for 5 years. It gives us the discipline to continue to work on making cuts while we, at the same time, hopefully see a rebounding of our economy.
So he's given us California residents and citizens a choice. We can vote to raise taxes, right?
Correct.
Or to have a dumber, less healthy, less productive, less competitive state. Would that be a fair?
That's certainly the way I see the equation. I think that given the cuts that would be triggered without the additional taxes in November, we are creating a situation in California which I think is fairly dire, particularly as it relates to our educational programming. The underinvestment in California education is already a problem. We've particularly seen this in our universities, where in response to continued ratcheting back of state funding, we've increased tuition, making it more and more difficult for middle-class families in particular to have their children achieve the college dream. So we're disinvesting in our future.
Okay, and you certainly have your fingers on the pulse of the state, or at least in Northern California, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area. Do you feel the voters are aware of the choice they're going to be given in November?
I think the voters have a broad understanding of the choice. But I believe that over the next 60 days before the election, that will be more dramatically drawn for them as the campaign related to the tax measure, both for and against it, will come out. And we will have a far more robust discussion of these choices. The majority of Californians do at this moment support the tax, but it's a very thin majority. And so I think there's a great opportunity for California to have this conversation about our future.
You represent District 21.
Correct.
How big, wide is that majority for voting for the tax in your district?
It's slightly higher here in this region and in my district than it is in other places of the state. And this tax measure fails in certain parts of the state. We are, in many ways, a state where we tend to be more liberal along the coastal zone and less liberal the further inland you go. And so oftentimes these polls show differences between the coastal zone where we live and the inland. When it all comes together, a slight advantage to the governor's proposal.
Right, and on the coastal areas, we have the population centers for the most part. Los
Correct.
Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Okay, when you're out there in public, are you helping to make the public aware of the choice?
The public is certainly asking me about this, and I'm more than happy to comment and discuss this with them. I think that particularly locally, great concern about education. It is an issue that I hear an awful lot about. We are a highly educated region. In fact, my assembly district, the 21st district, has the distinction of being, of all the 80 assembly districts, the one with the most, with the highest educational attainment levels. So people here are very concerned about education.
Oh yes, it's really the present, the future. I'm with you. Now there's going to be an organization, at least one, that is going to argue against the increase. Who are they?
Well, first of all, there are anti-tax groups throughout the state of California who feel that we are already overtaxed and believe that our course would be better drawn by even further cutbacks. They would like to see additional privatization of our activities in the public sector. They would like to see us curtail spending in a variety of areas. And it's part of that discussion we have in California about what is the role of government and what is the role of the private sector.
Okay. The Republicans, the conservatives in this state, have they signed a pledge against voting for taxes?
Well, the Republicans who are elected to the California State Assembly currently all have signed a pledge saying no new taxes, no new fees, and actually no extension of taxes. So they are very much opposed to the tax measures.
How do you get around dealing with people who have signed a pledge? That's like swearing on the Bible.
Well, it's actually why this tax measure is on the November ballot, because we could adopt tax increases in the state legislature without going to the citizens. It's impossible in the current climate because the pledge that's been taken blocks our capacity to do that. And so the only way that we can raise taxes in California at the moment is to go to the voters.
Okay, so you helped set this interview up just now to deal with one of the biggest, maybe it's the biggest issue of the state, the deficit, raising revenue, the trade-off between a dumber, sicker, less competitive, productive state and raising taxes. You set that up here. Is there another big issue in this state that,
well, I think,
on your mind?
I think the other part of our fiscal issue is the issue of pensions. And because that's one of the drivers of cost in California. A decade ago, governments across the state, at the local and state level, all said we have a robust economy, the economy is going to continue to grow, and we can be very generous in the benefits that we give to public employees.
Yes.
Candidly, we were too generous.
Yes.
And now we need to make a course correction. Recently, the state legislature did take action on a pension reform measure. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't end the problem. But it certainly swings the curve in a new direction. And there will be significant savings, up to $60 billion in savings over a 30-year period.
All right, so let me ask, the people who are already retired, you can't touch them.
No.
They're going to continue to get their benefits,
Correct.
of course. So then we have people who are working in the government, and are you referring to people in the state government, or does this apply to counties, cities?
This applies to counties and cities as well as state government. For folks who are currently working, there will be some adjustments made in their contribution to their retirement. Over a 5-year period, there'll be some adjustments. There'll be some changes in age of retirement. But most of what we do in this reflects folks who are newly employed in government. There's some problems in making significant adjustments to current employees because essentially you have contracts with them.
Sure. So a 5-year period of adjustments, and let's say I work for a city government, and can you start immediately on that 5-year, or when can you start, for example, requiring that I put more money into my pension fund?
It could happen immediately through collective bargaining. And actually, we've done that at the state. Recently, most of the state unions have signed new agreements which are shifting the level of their contribution. And very quickly at the state level, we will be at a 50-50 participation level.
So these unions, they recognize the challenge the state, the world faces, and they're willing to give back?
The unions have been willing to negotiate with us and do this at the collective bargaining table. They weren't particularly happy with the package that the legislature adopted and that I believe the governor will shortly sign because they felt that that went too far. But I think we've made some good course corrections in what we're doing.
Okay, the teachers union is a powerful union in this state. Am I correct?
Correct?
Is it the most powerful?
It may be one of the most powerful.
Okay.
We also, the prison guards have been a very powerful union in the state of California.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you out. All right, the teachers, have they been able to negotiate and have the state and that organization been able to resolve something?
Teachers are primarily employed at local level and not employed by the state. So they've been negotiating with local school boards. I think it's important to keep in mind that what we read about in terms of pension abuse, candidly, it isn't our teachers. It's not the teachers. Because the average teacher in retirement gets about $20,000 a year.
Yeah, that's not much.
Where there has been real concern are folks at upper management. We've seen some recent press stories about superintendents, the administrators in schools, where there have folks earning $250,000 a year in retirement.
Yeah.
Part of the package that we adopted in the legislature sets a cap of $100,000 a year for the target for pensions. Can't be above that.
Okay, so you're happy with how things are now starting to
I'm happy with the start that we've made. I think that there is more work to be done. We did not, for example, address the issue of retiree health. And that's something I think we have to look at as we look at federal health care reform and how that will impact us. And we'll need to take a look at what is the appropriate level of provision of health benefits to retirees.
So it's either going to be Obamacare or it's going to be voucher care. That'll have an influence on the state's retired health care folks? Is that?
It could. I mean, I think one of the things you look at is that if you have a more universal coverage, does that include some of the retirees who then may not need the same kinds of programs we currently provide them through their benefits? But that's a discussion that also should be occurring both at the state level, but also at the level of the bargaining table, and particularly with city councils, boards of education, and boards of supervisors with their employees.
All right, interesting. The other day I drove up from Santa Cruz along Route 1, I think it is, along the coast, and we stopped at a couple of the parks. And, I always think of those parks as just ideal places for myself, the people of the state, and the tourists from around the world. And they're great revenue sources. And I'm just wondering, are you folks doing anything to help make this state even more attractive than it is for the great tourists from all over?
Well, we do have a very robust program, mostly privately funded, to encourage tourism in California. And the Visitors Bureau at the state level works very hard at that to sell the message. Candidly, California is an easy sell. We have an awful lot to offer, and folks do like coming here. One of the things we've done recently is to kind of try to incent our folks at our local state parks to encourage them to think of ways to draw more people in and to create more revenue. So we're working with the local park rangers on some of those approaches.
Okay, now I'd like to shift to a different type of questioning. I happen to be very interested in you and politicians, how you think and how you do what you do. And one of the things I cannot understand is you're tireless folks. I mean, I go to a farmer's market and I see Joe Simidian, a colleague of yours, or you or others, you're here tonight. Where do you find the energy to be out there, first of all the time?
I think the energy comes from two places. Part of it's internal, and it is that I do this because I believe in serving my community. And I feel like I have been blessed by being a citizen here in this country and being a resident of California and of this local area. And I have a responsibility to give back. But also, I get tremendous input from the people I deal with. It is the interaction with citizens, with voters, that also stimulates me.
And where does this fundamental need, desire to want to serve come from you? Did something happen when you were a little boy? Was it your parents?
I think it is a core value that I think I inherited from my family. I remember very early as a child hearing stories at the Sunday dinner table about my grandmother, and she lived in Oakland during the Depression, not far from the railroad tracks in Oakland. And there were a group of men who had an encampment nearby. We'd call them hobos. Today we'd call them homeless, I suppose. But my grandmother put a pot of food on her back porch every day, so that the folks could come up from the rail yards and get something to eat. She had enough that she could share. And I think as a child, hearing that story and knowing that my parents were involved in community service and in various activities, my father was very active in the local Kiwanis Club, and I think it just became part of my DNA almost, that if you are fortunate enough and blessed that you should do something to give back.
So you liked, loved, and respected your grandmother.
Absolutely.
And that person who was very important to you was putting out food for the homeless. And that told you, in effect, I guess, that's an important thing to do.
Yeah, I think I get the message that, and maybe also a part of it was my religious background, but I really believe that we have a responsibility to care for each other, and that part of my role and part of what I need to do is to make sure that I take care of other people. I know they take care of me, so if I can contribute, if I can give back, that's part of what I should do.
So you don't believe in us relying on the great producers of this world, the great business folks to generate businesses, and their success is going to help create jobs for all of us. and their success and wealth is going to trickle down to us, and that's going to give us the monies we need to help educate our children and for us to have a good life. That's not quite what you see.
Well, let me be very clear. A robust economy is beneficial to all of us. And so I want to see business thrive and prosper. I want to see people employed. Job growth also generates additional tax revenue that allows us to do more in government to help people. So I support a robust business community. But I also happen to believe that one of the hallmarks of our country has been that we've always taken care of each other. There was a time in this country where if your barn burned down, you didn't wait for FEMA or the government to come and rebuild it. It was built the next week by your neighbors. We have always been a society, a country that takes care of each other. And interestingly enough, Michael, when the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall came down and the communist countries were opened up, one of the first things they did was they sought out charitable organizations in the United States, like the Red Cross and the YMCA, not to come and give them charity, but to teach them how to involve citizens in a way that people take care of each other. There were countries where folks expected the government to take care of everything.
Sure.
And the shift was now we have to take care of each other. And they needed us to come and teach them about that.
Okay, so I'd like to ask what has happened, because yes, I think in certain communities people will get together and help others build a bond. But I think one thing has happened, but I want your insight, but now there are some problems in this world, in this country, in this county, state, that are so big that the neighborhood cannot get together to solve. Like one might be climate change, another might be us heading toward peak oil production, and many others. And many of these developments, many people cannot seem to recognize but I hear other folks say, well, we don't need the government to solve our problems, but these problems are beyond the individual or the group. So what's happened in our country, what's happened in this state, it happens in this state also, that people think that way.
Well, I think that in a simpler time and place, we could do a lot more about taking care of each other. But if you think about it, that's why we have government. One of the reasons we formed government was to provide a way to help us take care of each other and to help us deal with things that are beyond the individual or beyond the local community. And so it is appropriate, I believe, for government to have a role in some of these very large issues and to help us set a course and direction. So I think government has a role in that regard.
Okay. And I heard you use the word religion once or twice in the last few minutes, your religious background. And your parents were very religious?
I come from a family very active churchgoers. And I think many people in the community know that I spent 5 years as an ordained minister in the Methodist Church. So that part of what grounds me and gives me some direction, I think, has been important in my life.
So would I be correct to assume that you're somebody who really believes in the Bible, and as a minister your goal was to get the teaching out of what's in it? Was that your main
No.
effort? No. You chuckle as you say no, or...
Well, getting into a discussion of religion is in the short period of time we have left is a challenge. But I think that part of the dynamic is that I believe and have always believed in the principles and teachings of the great philosophers who represent many of the religions of our world. I'm very much concerned sometimes that the religious institutions which were created to essentially institutionalize those teachings oftentimes stray from the teachings or solidify and rigidify the teachings in a way that I don't think are helpful. So I consider myself religious and spiritual, but in a very kind of personal way.
All right, you've been good. I just want to make a little announcement, and I wonder if we still have time, but as I think you know, I paint the big issues of our day, and I just want to announce that up there is my almost completed painting, and since you're had a religious background, and I know it's more in social, this is a painting, Liberty loves the children of the world, all of the children of the world. And by the way, each of those spheres represents a different minority group or group that is not fully accepted and embraced and loved by organizations that include the Catholic Church, the Ku Klux Klan, the Taliban, and some other folks. And those folks are all clustered together in the left and with the black background. And that's how I feel, and I know you do too. Liberty loves all the children of this world.
Your art is very...
Thank you. And